They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Warriors Hoopcast for another episode. Now, I know there was a game today against the Jazz, and I shall be breaking down that game and the one tomorrow against the Knicks together in a separate podcast because nobody wants to talk about the Jazz game right now. Moving on. This podcast will be talking about the Warriors rookies and sophomores. We're going to have a deep dive about them. And we shall also discuss what trade deadline outlooks the Warriors could have because there's only a few hours left. I'm sorry for the late upload, but yeah, let's get right into it. Let's start with James Wiseman. I shall give you his scouting report for some background, his pre draft scouting report. He has length and leaping ability to lock down the paint and allow his teammates to defend the three. His offensive game is as modern as it gets because he does not have a post up game, he has dribble moves. He does not have the OG hook shot, but he has a pull up jumper. This is as 2022 as it gets, and he relies on his finesse to finish. His strengths include his 7'1" height and a 7'6" wingspan and a 9 feet 6-inch reach. He's a monster physically and can run like a gazelle, and he can also leap out of the gym. His weaknesses are his side to side or lateral movements, and he's not particularly good for defending guards. He did have a lack of muscle earlier, and he struggled against the larger international centers in his high school USA experiences. He wants to play like a wing, and coaches will not allow that. He struggled to read defenses and make the right decisions, and his NBA comparison given was Hassan Whiteside. But the general rule of thumb for NBA bigs, most of them don't start off good, but they become amazing in 2 3 seasons. For example, let's take a look at Chris Bosh. He averaged 11 and a half points, took a leap to 16.8, and then he averaged 20 plus for the next 5 seasons. Dirk Nowitzki, 8.2 points per game, 17.5 points per game, and then 20 plus for the next 12 seasons. Granted, these weren't centers, but you kind of see the trend. Plus, Wiseman played about 60 minutes of total college games, and he didn't even have the summer league. What about his current fit with the Warriors? There were times in his rookie season where he looked like a former high school underclassman self. He looked lost. Let me tell you a story. Once in high school, there was an event which basically slipped Wiseman from the number one pick to the number two pick. He was pushed around and toyed with by a future Vanderbilt tight end. Wise was a lanky 6'10" center back then, and Gavin, the future Vanderbilt player, hindered Wiseman's game in a Tennessee State high school semifinal game, holding Wiseman to a miserable 7 points and 7 turnovers. Fun fact, Gavin was 6'3". He used his football strength to lean on Wiseman until he had been worn down and frustrated and hopelessly lost. Gavin's team ended up winning big. Now, Wiseman has built his frame since, but you can imagine how lost he looks sometimes. There are flashes of athleticism, however. The more experienced NBA players often bully this teenager into mistakes. He picked up 5 fouls in less than 13 minutes against the Lakers once, through charges and committing unnecessary fouls and struggling in defensive switches. He was a minus 19 plus minus overall. He did respond to this game by scoring 20 on 8 of 11 shooting, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, and a plus 17 plus minus overall. So you can see how variable his performances are, but we know he's the Dubs' best version of a true center. Sorry, Kevon, but he's just taller. His growth is essential to our franchise. The idealized long term version of Wiseman could be summed up in a sequence which he had against the Pistons in a game, where he blocked a shot, he grabbed the ball, went down the floor with speed, and dunked it. So that's length, grab and go skills, speed, and finishing. He's not the Andrew Bogut type center who the Warriors had much success with, but he would be an integral part for a championship core. But I wouldn't call him the future of this franchise. That's Jordan Poole. More about Jordan on another episode. My opinion would be to start him in the second unit, make him play with Jordan Poole instead. Now, let's move on to Jonathan Kuminga. Let's talk about Kuminga. He's a very mature presence in the court, and he's again a polarizing situation. If you watch 100 minutes of Kuminga highlights, you'll see him lost on defense often, staring at the ongoing action from no man's land. But if you watch the right 20 minutes, you'll realize how much of a two-way presence he already is and what a superstar he can be. He is at his best when he's using his gifts, his freakish athleticism, and his jumping ability. Let's see his scouting report. Strengths: physical force on both sides of the floor, very explosive, plays both ends of the floor again, can defend 1 through 4. Post game is very good, very physical in the paint, elite transition player, and an NBA ready body. His weaknesses were that he lacked shooting consistency, as seen this season. This season, he's shooting 30% on threes and 63% on free throws. Although his best fit is small forward, until his shooting numbers improve, he has to play power forward. His post game is strong but not diverse. This, however, has changed as he has added a lot of fakes to his preferred spin move. He slowed his game down as well, but he has struggled with decision making. His NBA comparison was Jalen Brown. But here's an interesting Steve Kerr take. Kuminga's player comparison, Sean Marion. Steve Kerr has seen Sean Marion on the Suns as a GM. He said that Sean used his athleticism on both ends of the floor, run hard. Wasn't the greatest three-point shooter, wasn't the greatest ball handler, but Sean was an all-star just because he played hard. According to Steve Kerr, the first step for Jonathan Kuminga would be to understand his gift of athleticism and explosiveness as a base to his game and add shooting, ball handling, etc. Steve is very impressed by Kuminga's effort running up and down the court, and in the recent few games, he has scored 15 plus points multiple times while having excellent defensive plays as well. And let's not forget the highlight reel worthy dunks. It's this effort that will carry Kuminga over the top of the NBA, and the future is very bright for him. Even Draymond has high praise for Kuminga. He has no doubt in his mind that Kuminga can check anyone in the league. Concluding this part, I'd like to say that the Warriors are building a monster in Jonathan, and I cannot wait to see him unleashed offensively and defensively on the best players of the league. His defenders should dread guarding him if he develops even a league average 3-point shot. Now let's look at Moses Moody. Here is his pre-draft. Moody was considered the draft's premier 3 and D type player. He has a 7'1 wingspan, which is an amazing tool for defense. He's had 20 plus blocked shots in college, Arkansas. Here's his offensive analysis. 81% on free throws with a high release point that can shoot over taller defenders. He's not an elite shooter by any means, but he can become a 3-point threat soon. Plus, he can be put in a pick and roll position, which leads to spot up attempts. Moody not only shoots these spot up catch and shoot attempts, but he also has the reflex to step inside the arc and shoot a pull up too as a counter move. Improving this would be ideal for his offensive game. His role at college did not involve too much playmaking, but he needs to refine his on ball game to pose an even greater threat to NBA defenses. His defensive analysis. A clear positive on the defensive side after considering his wingspan, lateral ability, and some sprinkled in rim protection. He's a very good on ball defender, and he's got the brains to cause on ball deflections, and he's done so often for Arkansas. He uses his size and wingspan to deny space. It is quite unfortunate that we've not seen much Moody minutes due to rotations. He has been a streaky shooter, however, and pretty much rules the G League if you've seen highlights. Like, there's never a time that he doesn't drop 30 points. Now, I talked about all this to talk about the trade deadline. Draymond and Kerr have the same vision about the trade deadline. They can't see any big activity happening, but they have a never say never attitude about it. Let's focus on one of those words: big. If the past few games haven't shown you how much we need a big 6'11 guy at center, I don't know what will. The Warriors are pretty locked in with all of the following players: Kuminga, Wiseman, and Moody. If they were made available on the market, it would garner considerable attention from across the league. But the most impactful player that could be traded for would be Miles Turner, if healthy. But the Warriors have made it pretty clear that they plan to nurture their future and contend at the same time. Is this a wise move? Pun intended. That's to be seen. There's been no communication between Bob Myers and the Warriors core, which could imply that there's no move to be made because the core of Curry, Draymond, and Clay are always consulted before stepping into high waters. Let's look at some of the smaller trade scenarios then. Although having lesser value than a Moody, Kuminga, or Wiseman, the upcoming first round pick could be used in a trade. Now, flashback. Last season at the deadline, the Warriors basically cast away the contracts of Brad Wanamaker and Marquise Chris for absolutely nothing in return. This enabled them to add GP2 to the roster next season. Two potential buyout candidates for the Warriors would be Tristan Thompson on the Pacers, who has showed interest to sign with a contender. Uh, I feel good naming the Warriors as a contender, and Thaddeus Young from the Spurs. Signing these players would be efficient financially, however, only if, like last year, they clear a player in advance. Players that come to mind for this are Nemanja Bjelica, Juan Toscano Anderson, and Damian Lee. But these players have a role and have seen considerable rotation minutes, so it is an unsure guess as to if any contract dumping will happen. There has been some optimism from the big department, however, with Wiseman having his first contact 3v3 practice in Utah. There is some hope of his return before the playoffs. He could be on the same return timeline as Draymond, which would mean the targeted month is March. Side note: Looney is an unrestricted free agent next year, and the most plausible plan for action with that would be to re sign him, as he's done an amazing job for the Dubs this season. Let's wait and watch what happens in the next few hours. Well, that's it for today's episode, guys. Thank you if you made it this far. Thank you if you even clicked on it. If you liked the episode, don't forget to leave a like on Spotify. Share this podcast, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Get out of here.